Wasteful.
Joining me on the HQ today is a guy who was born on the little island off the coast of Ireland called Australia. He grew up in Howth, County Dublin, did 4 years as an apprentice electrician, but with his dad touring the world as an Irish tenor, he was always going to navigate his way to the music industry. In 1980 is when it all started, winning the Eurovision for Ireland in the Netherlands, and he became an overnight sensation, only to win it again in 1987 with Hold Me Now, and again in 1992 writing Why Me for Linda Martin. He is the most successful person in Eurovision history, and he sung the first ever recording of You Raise Me Up. Bet you didn't know that. Ladies and gentlemen, the legend himself, Mr. Eurovision, Johnny Logan!
Well, thank you very much for that. That's the first time I've ever been given credit publicly for doing the vocal on You Raise Me Up.
Well, let's go there. So I remember Louis telling, well, the funny story about You Raise Me Up for us is we didn't want to do it. It was 2005. Brian had left the band in 2004. We had done 6 years. And 5-6 years for a boy band is that tricky time when Robbie's left. If you do actually pop bands, Jerry left Spice Girls, Robbie left Take That. And Simon Cowell, her A&R man at the time, he came up with this crazy idea to do a swing album, Rat Pack stuff, which was completely left to centre. Yeah. And Robbie Williams had done one and been really successful with it. So Simon said to us, well, why don't we do one? There's the four of you now, Brian has left. And almost what it does is, it nearly hides the fact you've lost a member, because you can be four. Someone could be Frank, someone can be Bobby Darin, Dean Martin.
You're also doing something totally different.
Left us, and it'll buy us a bit of time to find our feet. And we did that. And listen, it was fine, it was successful, but from a Westlife perspective, it was our least successful. But we kind of knew it would be with the different genre of music or style of music we were doing. And then the following year, Louis rocks up and plays us You Raise Me Up. And it was the Brian Kennedy, Josh Groban. Brian had a hit first in Ireland. Josh Groban had a hit in America.
Brian was the one they could replace my vocal with.
Yeah, which I'm going to get to. I'm going to give you the credit, don't worry. And then he said to us, let's do it. And we were like, but it's a beautiful song. But to us, it was maybe a little bit too churchy or too gospely.
It's Danny Boy.
It's Danny Boy, yeah. And he said, just try it. So we got in with Steve Mack, our producer, who's written Fly With Wings, Swear Again, etc. Yeah. And he managed to make it a more poppy radio commercial style, and we did it and became a big hit. And then we went for dinner one night. We did it on the Nobel Peace Prize with Barack Obama in the Spectrum Arena in Oslo, and it was a huge hit, number one in Australia again for us. And then we went for dinner one night, and then Louis says, Johnny Logan did the first vocal. It was effectively Brendan Graham wrote it and rang Johnny.
It was Ralph Loveland, because I knew Ralph, who was the writer of it.
From Secret Garden.
When I sang the vocal, Brendan came into the studio because he was afraid some of the lyrics wouldn't work. And he gave me a lovely compliment.
So take it to you. So what happened from there?
Fionnuala came up to me, like they said, Secret Garden had no money, and they needed. Ralph had written this song, and he'd written it with me in mind to sing it, and. I've always been, sort of fairly open like that, and I'd known Fionnuala because she had played with the RTE Light when I won both the first two Eurovisions. And I've known Ralph since 1980, so I said, yeah, of course I'll go in. But actually, when I went in to do the vocal, those were the good old days, the drinking days. I remember Fionnuala saying to me when I came in to do the vocal, she liked to have candles all around, lit around her to create an atmosphere. And she said, what would you like? And I said, can you put a bottle of wine in the fridge and put another one beside the microphone stand, and let's see where we get to. I had a polyp on my vocal cords when I did that, and it was very difficult for me to sing. At the time, my wife was in hospital as well. She wasn't well. And I went into Windmill 2 and I did it. And I kind of think everybody knew when I was doing it, because there was only strings and piano. There was no guide vocal, nothing. Okay. And so I had to kind of listen to where the strings, where the strings ascended, then my voice would go up. I mean, I had to explain that to Rolf and to the others. Sometimes they wanted me to hit a harder note. And I was saying, if you listen to the strings, they're playing softer, things like this. But we got that vocal eventually, and to this day, it's still, Rolf has told me his favourite version. And he
hang on a minute now, you're talking to Wesley.
No, he actually, he's getting it this year at the end of next month, I think it is. he asked me would I go. No, in the beginning of September. He's 70 years in, like he's 70 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
So they're doing a thing in Kristiansand with the Kristiansand Philharmonic Orchestra, and he asked me would I come over and sing "You Raise Me Up" and another one for that show because it's going to be a big TV show. But for once, I realised, like I said, okay, my family and me were going on a holiday, and I'm not cancelling that for anything. So I said, I'm going on. That's more important to me now at this stage in my life.
Yeah.
And but when I did the vocal, seemingly, according to Andrew Boland, who was the engineer, there's a book about it. They played. The record company had given them a guide saying, like, look, whatever we want to aim you for a classical market, so nothing Eurovision, because Ralph had won the Eurovision, So and Brendan Graham, of course. So they played them a couple of the songs that they'd done from the album, and then the record company went, yeah, and then they played them "You Raise Me Up," and we went, wow, that's the one. Who's the singer? They said Johnny Logan. He said, oh no, we've got to get someone else. So they auditioned 6 other singers, and Brian got the gig, and
why did they say history. Not Johnny Logan? Because of the Eurovision?
Yeah, because of the Eurovision. Because they didn't want to. The Eurovision has been, throughout my life, a bonus and a curse in this way. They wanted to aim Eurovision for a different type of a market, different audience. I had no problem with that because I know what record companies are like.
It's a beautiful song, and you're a fantastic singer. And I think your version is amazing. So if that would have been a huge hit.
I sing it.
I actually would have won the Eurovision as well, by the way, if that was in there.
Well, the strange thing for me was that Brian went on to do the Eurovision and came 10th. Right. Years afterwards, like sort of, they wanted to get away from the Eurovision, but also the other thing that got to me. And Brian is a wonderful singer. I think the world of Brian.
He's a fantastic singer.
I should add that now as well. But I think that I was like sort of, for me, I wouldn't sing it for years. They asked me to go to China with them, Secret Garden tour, because I had just had a double platinum album in Scandinavia of Irish music, Whiskey in the Jar and Molly Malone, which was the first album I did sober and produced it myself with my keyboard player.
The irony in Whiskey in the Jar is the first one you do sober.
Oh, tell me about it. I was only off to drink 5 months when I did it. And it was all Black Velvet Band and The Town I Love So Well and all this stuff. It's called The Irish Connection. And we had to do it in 8 days. 14 vocals I did in one day, and all the back-end vocals I had to do the next day. Because you can't ask the Danish guys that were working with me to sing, whack for the diddle-o, dance to your partner, well, like sort of, it was too blah for them, so I had to do all the vocals on it.
Okay.
And to this day, I'm still really proud of it, because it sold almost 300,000 copies. It went double platinum in Denmark, double platinum, and #1 in Sweden as well. It was, like sort of very weird for me. But in the meantime, I digressed. In the meantime, Secret Garden asked me, Ralph had asked, would I go to China and sing with them at the time? And I said no. And the only reason I said no was because I'd never been given credit for that. I was thick. And
you do sing it now, though. I've seen you do it now. You embrace it now.
That's why I was going to follow on with that. But my mother passed away, and I went to Australia. And when my dad passed away, I kind of drank my way through that. When my mother passed away, I did it completely sober. I was holding her hand when she said goodbye. We were all standing beside her. I'm not getting into a morbid type of thing.
No, but I sang
at her funeral. I sang She Moved Through the Fair.
Lovely song.
We all talked to her. We dressed her in her jewellery before she went to Dad. And I came back and I went to Sweden and I did 28 shows in 31 days. And a lot of them were churches, with gospel choirs. And it was with a band called Rosario. That's probably the wrong name. It was Roos, something Roos. Shell Roos was the band leader. And I started singing You Raise Me Up on that, but I sang it. I was talking to my mother in all the churches when we played. I'd light a candle from Mum and Dad. And I started singing it, and I've been singing it since again. But that's a personal thing between me, God, and my parents,
When You Raise Me Up, obviously, when it happened for us, my dad's passed away suddenly, and we sang it at his funeral.
Yeah.
And Keane's dad has passed away, we sang it at his funeral. And Shane's mum and dad had passed away, and we sang it at that funeral as well for his mum, because his funeral was during COVID, we couldn't go. But it's such a special song. It's hard to get through when it means so much to you. Tell me about your mum. What was she like for you growing up?
World War III in knickers. My mother was one of 12 children from Kilkenny,
Right.
She was a Gargan. My grandfather had 7 All-Irelands, so we played. I have 15 medals for hurling, 16 for Gaelic football, which you didn't know about. 2 trophies for swimming and diving as well. You know, I won my first race in Howth from the stake swimming race over in the old day, like I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
It was a sea race. But I was always involved, like yourself, with sports through my life. And I think that Mam, that was the only time when we played in Croke Park that she used to press our shorts and our shirts that we'd look perfect for that. My mum and dad were very bohemian. I mean, mum and dad, they never really had any structure to their life. They just believed God. Dad believed God would look after him. So, you know, like sort of whatever it's decision he made and we were uprooted and taken all over. I was born in Australia. My younger brother, Liam, he died at 3 weeks old. He was born in Australia. My younger brother, Eamon, was born in London. My older brother, Mick, was born in London. And my sister was born in Scotland. We were 2 babies. So we were born to do the job that I do. But I think Mum was a nurse at the end of World War II. She was based in Chelsea. And my father was kicked out of his home in Northern Ireland, Derry, when he was 8. He lived on William Street. Kicked out at 18 years old because he had a relationship with a dancer who was much older. And he said it was never consummated. You know? Yeah, like we always believed him, you know. But he met my mum. He was sleeping on a park bench, I think, at sometimes when he was in London. And my mum, they moved in together, lived together, and we were all born out of wedlock and all this sort of stuff. You know, so when people call me Johnny Logan,
blasphemy,
Johnny Logan, you're a bastard. I said, yeah, and you know, but the reality of it is they loved each other. They loved each other hugely. And when my sister was married, who got born in Scotland, they went off and got married. And but they had been trying to get an annulment for years. But I'm just trying to give you a kind of a background to the kind of person my mother was. She could be vicious. She could beat the living crap out of you, and she did with me more than once. My father was a gentle, really, really gentle man. Never raised a hand to me, just once when he caught me mitching from school up in Trada. And my mother, I think, talked him into it. But Mum would flay you. I remember we had gangs and things like this when we were kids. And one day there were about 50 kids out in the field behind our house. They'd come up to fight us, and there were 3 of us in the family. And we had about 4 or 5 friends. And my mother came out into the field and said, "One at a time, they'll fight you one at a time." And that was basically how we grew up. And my mother was like she was very loving and very, very emotional. And it took me my lifetime to really discover, because my father was the singer. Right. And he was the one with the knowledge of Irish music. And I remember sitting in the latter part of my life with my mother in a car. I think it was somewhere I can't remember exactly where it was. And I was playing her Mícheál Súnamháil's album, Mícheál Súnamháil, and it was traditional, you know, traditional songs, but played the way he does in the orchestra. My mother knew every single one of them, and you know the names of them, and she was able to sing along with them, and I was just totally blown away. That's why I sang "She Moved Through the Fair" for her when she passed. And I tried to sing when my brother died. I tried to sing the parting class, but I broke down once on it. I was extremely close to my brother, as you probably know. Yeah. You know, we worked together all our life. But I think the thing about anybody's mother, your own mother, like anybody's mother, they're not just mothers; they're the keepers of your childhood. They're the people who you can see where you came from through their eyes. And my mother was like that. There was huge love from both my parents. There was sometimes madness, complete madness. Of course. I remember coming home into Howth one day and finding, I was bringing a girlfriend home, later became my wife, home. And my mother had cooked chili, and Mick came into the kitchen, started eating it. And my mother said, "You can't eat that, that's for Sean, he's coming home with the girlfriend." And by the time I got home, the walls were covered in chili. They'd had a chili fight. And, you know, that's what they were like.
But isn't that what houses are? Isn't that what Irish houses are? It's chaos.
That was magical when we were in Howth. But then we went to Drogheda and we bought a pub.
Okay. Well, before you go to Drogheda, where in Howth were you from? Where did you grow up?
Dungriffin Road, halfway up the hill.
Okay.
But like I said, we went to the primary school there. And then I went to Chanel College for 6 months. Both myself and my brother Mick were kicked out after 6 months. Remember being
for throwing chili.
we were sort of. I think the teacher was beating the crap out of me, and Mick got up and stopped him. But we were kicked out. We were in the line to go into school, and the teacher, the principal, came out and in front of the whole school and said, "You, Master Sherrard Senior." Mick was wearing an FCA coat, and he was trying to grow a tash, and we both had long hair. Says, "You, Master Sherrard Senior, will end up digging holes. You, Master Sherrard Junior, will end up filling them in after him." He said, I still remember saying to me, he said, "Get out of here, you long-haired Mexican bandit, and take your brother with you." That was my end in Chanel College.
They don't make teachers like they used to. How old was your mum when she passed? Was that recently?
Mum was 87.
Wow.
My dad was 69.
Yeah, that's young.
It's weird because I'm 71 next month, and it's really weird because I'm older than he was, and my dad always seemed like a much older man to me. Yeah. And it's kind of weird. Sometimes I realise, what he was going through and how life was for him because he had rheumatoid arthritis. And I realise it more now as an adult than I ever did as a child.
Yeah. It's
I loved him to bits though. It killed me when he died.
Do you think, I mean, I know you did, but do you know or think you made them proud through your career?
Dad never told me. He just once said to Mum, he said, "Sean has something special." And she told me that afterwards. He knew how much I loved him. Dad wasn't the kind that would say he loved you. But the last time I saw him, I climbed in the bed beside him, and hugged him for an hour. And I said goodbye to him. Excuse me.
Are you okay?
I'm fine, man. Sorry. Woo. And, so he knew. That's all, you were asking, did we know? He knew.
Yeah.
And I knew.
Do you still think about them? Are you religious? You're religious, right? You think they're looking down?
I hope so. I hope it's down, not up. Just with my mum, I'm kind of my dad, my mum. Mick and my mum, I'm not sure. But I think this is... I think like sort of if there's a heaven, mum and dad are there. Yeah. And so is my little brother Eamon. Mick will be wherever I go. He'll be waiting for me, and there's bound to be a champagne bar, and I'll be back on the garden again then.
He's in the bar going, Johnny, come on, hurry up, Sean.
You're not doing another gig before.
Right, tell me...
Sorry about that, I got kind of... just in the middle, I got a kind of little flashback.
Do you know, it's good, to be honest, Johnny, because I know exactly... My mom's still around, thankfully, and she's still doing well, but my dad passed. I think people who know me will know that. He passed very suddenly at 60.
Yeah, that's very young, man.
And there's not a day... It was a heart attack, and he went to work, and he didn't come home and all that, but there's not a day that goes by that I don't think of him in some way.
And it gets worse as you get older.
Yeah. And my own kids, and your kids are adults, obviously. My own kids don't remember. They remember they have a very vague memory. Rock'em J are 18 now, and they have a very vague memory of him. Gia, my daughter's 11. She never met him. And it's all the things you do and that he wasn't around for. The grandkids, the big moments. He saw Westlife. He was at the big shows. But there was still stuff we did in later career, like America and different things that we did that he just didn't see. But listen, myself and Shane always say this, and Keane should have said because our parents are gone. We still believe they're pulling the strings up there.
Absolutely.
We still believe they're, like kind of dancing puppets going, let's try and make this happen.
One of the best decisions I made, I can say that now where I sit in my life because I'm happy. I'm in a great place in my life at the moment, financially and every other way. And I think that in 87, after I won the Eurovision, I saw the same thing happening in England with Sony Music and the follow-ups to Hold Me Now. And it was a fight. Again, Mr. Eurovision again. So I took the whole family and I spoke to Sony Germany. I took the whole family, went to Australia for 2 weeks. We stayed for 2 months and spent all that time. My dad met his grandchildren, sort of they got to get to spend the two of them anyway. They got to spend time with them. And I have some wonderful memories of that. Yeah. They discovered, in Australia, the bottle shops, where you can go and get your drink, whatever.
Okay.
You can buy ice, dry ice. And I bought dry ice to keep the wine chilled and all this sort of thing. And Adam, my eldest son, who's now 45, will kill me for saying this. found the dry ice, and he realised when he put it in the swimming pool and all this sort of thing that it smoked up, and my dad was stuck to a wheelchair, so we had to bring him a pee bucket, you know, sometimes to go to the toilet. He's been this gold smoke came up. Had him put it in, like, so to see what would happen. And that, Jesus Christ! But I got those memories as well, and that's, you know, like, sort of. I can look back on a lot of it, but I mean, 60 was very young, man, and I can understand completely. You've obviously handled it better. I completely broke apart.
Yeah, I think I did break apart internally. I mean, I'm probably a little bit more old school than I thought I was. Yeah. I probably should have gone to counselling, and I didn't. You know, nowadays I think everybody does that grief counselling and stuff like that, and it's probably good.
I did it. I stopped drinking 20 years ago, and I went into counselling, and I realised that it wasn't the alcohol that was the problem. There was obviously alcohol was a problem, but my main problems were about things like that, saying goodbye to my dad and all those kind of things. Yeah. That was much more than the alcohol. Right. The stuff that had happened, all that stuff that went on, you know, around the Eurovision, all the court cases, all that stuff.
But you know what I think what makes me safe and happy is that I know how proud he was of all of his kids.
Absolutely,
and he
with
see
good reason.
And my dad, you probably don't know this, Johnny, but my dad was a cabaret singer. He was a lead singer of a band called Nicky and Studz. Nicky, same name, Nicky and Studz. Yeah. So he was the lead singer of a band for 30, 40 years. He was in bands from cabaret in Dublin.
I didn't know that either.
And so he did the racecourse in Baldoyle as a residency all my life. You know, he would have been
realised when I saw the guitar, the Washburn over there.
Yeah. So he was a big. So okay, I'll paint a picture of my dad. He was a painter and decorator by trade. You'll know this because you dipped into electricians.
I was a crap electrician.
Well, I'd like to say he was a fantastic painter. But he would come home and he would be putting turps on his hands to clean the paint off, and he'd be covered over and he'd be stripped down, and all of a sudden, like that old TV show Stars in Their Eyes, he'd turn it in an hour. He'd be out of the room and he'd be in a red velvet suit with those frilly shirts and the dicky bow. And he was like he was going off to present the biggest TV show in the world, and he'd be out there, and that was his gig. And he was gigging in my childhood. He gigged 7 nights a week. Monday he'd be a red suit, Tuesday he'd be a blue suit. He
was rich. He had 3. I only had 1 suit.
And you know what? It's even funny because even in the glory days that you gave us in Eurovision, my dad would have been gigging those nights when Eurovision were on around the corner. My mum would have went around. We would have had babysitters, and we watched the Eurovision in the house. And my mum and dad would be phoning us from the racecourse, going,
"It was huge.
We won."
Yeah, people don't realise how big it was because Ireland had so little success in those days that it was a huge thing to do, and it was such a great honour.
And John, you know this, but I'm going to tell you, put on record, you were a massive part of that in that. And the reason people joke about Ireland winning the Eurovision every other year, but I mean that was built on pretty much what you did.
Yeah, it's really nice that you say that, Nicky, but like I said, the thing is that it's all of it happened, and you will understand this. I was alone, and you know, like Louis wasn't really managing me. Louis was kind of my friend. He booked me out of gigs.
Right.
The management got taken away by people and whatever. I found out years later, after 1980, that ABBA's manager came over and tried to take over my management. Nobody even told me that he came to Ireland, that he was interested. That would have been the making of me, to have a proper management, but I didn't. And but there's no point in looking back at things like this. You have to move forward. And what happened to me was, you know, in those days, you won the Eurovision. The next day, you know, you won it on a Saturday. They pressed the records on a Sunday. Monday, you were off promoting. I was doing a show in Paris with Johnny Hallyday, who was like Elvis Presley over there in those days, and the Lenny Renault show. Then I'd be going to Berlin to do the hit parade, and then doing Top of the Pops. And so strange, just when you're talking about that particular time, you know, the Doc, the sax player Doc, sent me a picture of himself and Paul Duffy having a pint just 2 days ago, and Paul was the sax player who played on What's Another Year on the Top of the Pops the day of my birthday. Wow. I was number 1 in the charts, and I went to number 1, and they presented me with the birthday cake on Top of the Pops, and Paul Duffy played the tenor sax. It was actually an alto sax that it was played on, but Paul played it on tenor. He was a phenomenal sax player and one of the nicest guys you could meet. It's just so many memories, but you didn't have time to enjoy them. That's the point I was going to make. Well, you're constantly moving. You know,
the tag Mr. Eurovision. I mean, it must in one way make you feel so proud to go, everything I did, I am Mr. Eurovision, or I'm labelled. But there is a curse to it. You've mentioned Anna Gulliver. What is the curse?
The curse is like sort of you're labelled, you're boxed. It's like being in a boy band, like being the same thing.
Yeah.
You're a member of Westlife, and for the rest of your life, you know, like you've done great for yourself. You told me earlier that you played, you know, like football for like sort of Leeds, and like sort of the, you know. I never knew any of that about, like, sort of, I told you about the hurling medals, and my grandfather having 7 All-Irelands. I never, like, sort of, there's so much else about you that you don't know, because that overshadows everything.
Do you think it curtailed
I think it was very difficult. I remember being with Muff Winwood after Hold Me Now with Bill Whelan, sitting in a cafe in London near Soho Square, and Tom Jones had just been #1. And I realised Muff Winwood said to me, he said, well, we just had a #1 with Tom. But what do you do now? And I just thought to myself, I got to get out of England. I got to get away from the record company. I spoke to Sony Germany. And when I was in Australia, I was dropped by England and taken up by Sony Germany. My contract was swapped over. And because I wanted to be in Central Europe, I realised there was no future for me because of the Eurovision in England. But it was one of the best decisions I made, although it was very hard for many, many years, because even in Germany, people still wanted me. I have this voice from the days that we played in Ireland, the bands, the show bands. You learned to sing everything like your dad. You did the charts. Yeah. You did country and western, whatever people wanted to hear. So when the record company would say to me, what do you want to sing? I said, well, whatever was #1 at the time, that was what I wanted to sing. Yeah. And when I went to Germany, it was the same thing. When it was Whitney Houston singing "I Will Always Love You," can you sing that? Yeah, I can sing that. When it was Simply Red, can you sing that? Yeah, I can sing. When it was Duran Duran, and it was confusing for them as well as me. And that didn't end until the early 2000s, when I went to Copenhagen to do an album called "Reach for Me," and the album was done in 10 days, 3 different producers. And I had to go to 3 different studios, sometimes each day, and sing in different studios to get the tracks done. It was all covers except What's Another Year, Hold Me Now and Why Me were on the album. And then when they released it, it went gold after 11 days. And after this, I thought, like sort of, there was a period of a couple of years when nobody was interested in anything I did, because I was recording other people's music all the time. And I finally started recording my own music again. And then I did that Irish album. In between record deals, and suddenly that gave me the amount of money that I needed to be my own producer and to continue from that. Now I have my own record label, my own publishing label, and I make all my decisions myself. And the freedom, the freedom that gave me, I don't have an A&R man breathing down my neck saying you have to record this. I record what I want.
And when you want, no timeline to hit. Yeah.
I mean, I'm 8 tracks into a new album now at the moment.
Oh, wow.
But I also have 3-4 other projects going as well. Like I recorded a duet which I'm doing in Sweden with a young Swedish lady. It's a cover of "Have I Told You Lately That I Love You." I did a track called "Cherishing an Echo" for an album with John Halliwell and Martin Barr and all those guys from the 70s. Great, phenomenal musicians. A guy called Alan Simon wrote the song, and it's a kind of a jazz album, which will come out at the end of this year. I did a track for Harold Faltermeyer for a movie which is coming in December, which I think is going to be huge. It's called The Sunny Side of Christmas. And like sort of, Harold, for those people that are watching and don't know, Harold did the music for Top Gun.
Top Gun, I was going to say.
And Top Gun Maverick and Beverly Hills Cop, Miami Vice.
And Top Gun is actually my favourite movie of all time.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
You'll know that bong.
Yeah.
That's he's still using
and
this.
That
He's still using the bomb on the Christmas one. Yeah. But that was lovely because he asked me, and I could instantly say, "Yeah, I'd love to do it." But then he sent me a contract, and he said, and in the contract there was a clause saying, "If it's successful, we'll want to do an album with you." And I said, "Well, if it's successful, we'll do an album, but we'll do it on a handshake. I don't want it in the contract because I don't want anybody dictating, even you, Harold. I don't want anybody telling me what I have to sing."
Okay.
And that's, Harold was long enough to understand that with someone my age and who's been around this. But we did the video already, the first half. It was great with sort of being done in Germany.
Yeah.
The premiere is in October. And we did the video. He owns half a mountain up in Austria near Villach. It's like a huge, huge place. And he owns like a forest in Munich. And he's a place in Salzburg as well. His studio is in Munich. And he, God knows where else he owns, in America, etc. But we did the video in the snow in Austria, up in a mountain. And I can't ski. Like, it wasn't around for people my age group when I was growing up.
There wasn't enough snow in Howth when you were a kid.
No, there was no in Drogheda. You know, like
definitely not Drogheda. There's no mountains.
Some of the people that I grew up with, if they saw snow, they'd be sniffing it. You know?
No names, please.
Yeah, exactly.
No names.
You know, but the thing is, they had a drone. I'm sure you've done all these stuff. Like, you've done really much bigger budget videos than you'd understand. They had a drone. They had me out in this field, I thought, like sort of up to my knees in snow, wearing moon boots. And, you know, like the speaker playing the stuff out of shot. Yeah. You know, like sort of, and this drone flying over me for the long shots. They only told me afterwards it was a lake I was on. It's like they didn't tell me what I was on. It was a lake, you know, like a lake that was covered in snow. And like, so this is, you know, like that, and me jumping up and down. That's but we did that, and now we have another clip to do in the recording studio in the summer. Right. And then they'll have the edits from the movie. They put them together. And the October, the premiere will be in Berlin, and then the track comes out in November.
So it's out in November?
Yeah, but, you know, that's just it. I did last year the guest spot on the first semi-final of the Eurovision. Okay. I did an orchestral version of Euphoria.
Yeah, I saw that actually. Yeah.
I was smothered with a flu, and my manager, Tanya, God rest her soul, my business partner, everything. She was stuck in the hotel. She was in a room for 4 days after I left. She couldn't move. And when she got back to Germany, they isolated her for 10 days. She was so sick. She'd passed this on to me, and I had to sing with this. So I was trying to look really confident, but I couldn't hear. And you have one thing that I know you'll understand, and I have to explain it this way for the people that are going to be watching the podcast. When I sang it, I loved the arrangement. I thought it was brilliant. But I hate click tracks. Right. Okay. You know, they get in the way of my feel. And feel for me is everything when I'm singing. Yeah. And bass and drums normally. And there was no bass and drums on this. It was just cellos and strings and a couple of woodwinds and piano. And the rehearsals, I always wear one in-ear. The other one is always out. So we're doing it, and there's a high B flat at the end. No problem, all the time. And so we did it. I did a gig in Cannes 2 nights before. Came up, did the sound check, the rehearsals, 2 rehearsals in the day. Then the day of the show, they let in the audience for the dress rehearsal. You know, 17,000 Swedish people, Eurovision fans. And remembering that this is orchestral, no click track. There's no.
So you can't hear the start of the song.
You can't, you know. Yeah. But they started singing along.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Out of time, out of tune.
So you can't hear the music.
And coming in this side, and I could only hear. And so, like, I could keep in tune, but the timing was wavering. So they said to the sound guy, said to me, "Please, can you wear the other in-ear tonight?" So the first time I heard it on both ears was walking on the stage that night, and I've never used 2 in-ears before, and I had a head cold. It was like singing in a bubble. But anyway, that's...
But Johnny, just real quick on that, right, okay, so when I had 14 years in Westlife where we did TV shows, so there's no real cheers because it's, you know, they clap at the start, they clap at the end. Then you've concerts as well where you wear one ear and you have monitors on the stage as well.
Yeah, that's what that means.
So when I did the Eurovision in 2016 for Ireland, right, so signed up, all done, and then a couple of weeks before the show, you get to see, it might have been, I mean, it was very different in your time because you were singing with a live orchestra. Yeah. We saw the layout of the stage, and I said to the Irish contingent, where our delegation, where's the floor monitors? Yeah. And they went, they don't have floor monitors. So I was like, okay, so that's now different.
Nicky, the problem is it's not designed for singing.
Yeah.
It's designed for visuals. And that's all about the visuals.
So they said to me, so you're going to have to wear 2 in-ear monitors, which I'm not used to. I'm used to 14 years. One here in the crowd on my left and here in this on my right.
Welcome to the world.
So look, you have to do it. So I always remember then, and thankfully this happened pre-going to Stockholm. I did the Voice of Ireland, in Ireland obviously, and there was a click track at the start, right? But it literally went in my ears, right? And then it was the opening vocal, right?
Yeah.
But when somebody introduced the song and they go, ladies and gentlemen, Nicky Byrne, Sunlight, right? And then it goes, so it was going, I couldn't, and I thought they weren't going to cue the track until the applause had died down, right? But it went up, and I could hear the music going, dun, 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 and I was like, and I'm straight away, I'm going, I'm fucking late here. Don't be afraid, it's only da. So I had to get straight into it and try to catch up with myself.
I understand completely. It's terrible.
And you feel like an ass.
But the thing is, Nicky, nothing can, when you don't have somebody behind you or working with you that is aware of that, then you're facing it all alone.
Yeah. But you're the one on the television that's looking like the gobshite.
Yeah, but purposely all the people who are around you, they're all involved with the Eurovision, with the presentation of the show.
Yeah.
I mean, even the people that are coming from Ireland, they don't give you anything on how you can sing it. Yeah. They're all interested. I mean, Ian McGarry, who I loved, God rest his soul, he was such a lovely man. He had to fight at the Eurovision. When I hit the high note in Hold Me Now, I do a natural thing whenever I sing, and whenever I'm singing live, whenever I hit something that needs power, it's like a physical reaction.
You go down on one knee,
goes down and bends down to get it. Yeah. And they were missing it in the camera shots. But he was able to tell them it was about the camera shots. It wasn't about the note. Yeah. It was about the camera shots. Yeah. And that was, I look back on that, even the Eurovisions, how hard it was to sing Hold Me Now. Nowadays, I have enough experience to say, no compressor, no limiter on the vocal, please.
But you were a boy, Johnny. I watched your performance last night before, obviously, you were coming in today. You're just a boy. What a performance, by the way. But I can see in your face, and I want to ask you, how nervous were you?
I was shitting myself.
Yeah.
The thing is, I remember when I went to hit the high note, that my knees gave out. There was a big head red flush, and I said, you're not going to get this. And I still to this day don't remember hitting it on the show. I hit it and it was over and I finished the song.
Were your parents in Belgium? No,
my dad sent me a lovely, there wasn't texting or anything like that.
No cell phone.
My dad had sent me a fax. I know, was it no, it wasn't a fax. It was a telegram saying, he said, Justin, all it said was, I know you're nervous, but you're going to win. And when you do, thank God, thank Yahweh, he said. And that's why I said at the end.
You did say that.
Thank you, God.
Yeah. That was my first introduction to Yahweh. I didn't know what Yahweh, when you
Yahweh
said that
the old word.
Yeah, I never knew what that was.
I didn't know what it meant. My father told me.
That's fascinating. And correct me if I'm wrong, I do remember when you won with Hold Me Now, when you sang it again with the trophy on the floor, you went, I can't sing anymore at the end.
Yeah, that's because I had, I had a lot of vocal problems in the lead up to it. I think I overworked trying to make as much money as I could on gigs Louis Walsh was putting in for me, leading up to, and then suddenly...
It's okay, he'll be there, he'll do it. He's great, Johnny's great, Johnny's great. Yeah, I texted him last night that you were coming on, he said, you're going to love him. He's great. Tell him I said hi.
Yeah, well, Louis and myself were and still are friends, and like I said, we were like brothers, to be honest, for 17 years.
Yeah.
And
are you allowed to reveal his age, his real age, or will you not?
He never told me. Louis never told me anything about his private life at all. That's Louis.
Yeah. And, I think if we tried to find his birth cert, I think that'd be not his true age either. Anyway, because you worked with him for so long.
No, but I used to sleep in his apartment.
Right.
When I was partying in Dublin. Yeah. I used to sleep, and he'd come home and he'd find me on the couch. He'd probably just look up to heaven and say, how am I going to get rid of this fella? But Louis, like said, we laughed. We laughed. I remember, one moment. There was a song in 1980. In 1980, I think it was, or 87. It could have been 87. And it was "Son of Jamaica." It was by a German band called the Gumbay Dance Band, and they had limbo dancers when they were singing it. And the guy that did it used to drench himself in gold chains and everything. And it was one of these most annoying people, that every time I did a show we did together, I would always sing live because I can't mime. I'm crap at miming. Yeah. It's not I'm trying to be impressive. Yeah. I just don't, I sing, my lips move, and then the vocal comes out a second later. It's much easier for me to sing live. And he would want to sing live. And, I was talking to Charles Aznavour's manager in a bar after a TV show, and he comes up and he walks in front of me and starts, takes over the conversation. Yeah. And you can see the manager going, who is this guy? But he had a big hit record. It was a huge hit called Son of Jamaica, and I hated it. It was for me, like a bad Joe Dolan. And I loved Joe.
Yeah.
Instead of this. And we went to do this show in Austria, in Villach. And Louis was already there with Billy from the Freshmen. And Billy was supposed to rehearse the orchestra, and he hadn't had time to do it properly, so the orchestra wasn't rehearsed. And we had to do it, you know, I was expecting to rehearse with the band, if you can imagine what this is like. And I was led into the TV show. There was a huge audience, a couple of thousand people sitting in the audience. I was put in a jury. Sat in the jury, had to watch other people sing. And then they said, ladies and gentlemen, Johnny Logan. I had to walk up from the jury, no sound check, take the microphone and sing. And it was a nightmare. And we went back to the hotel, and all I wanted to do was go to bed. And there was no room in the hotel. And they said, we've given your room away. And there was a lineup of things that went to it. Louis was actually in tears at one point.
Yeah.
And we just had enough. And I said to him, Louis, I'm going to the nightclub and getting a bottle of wine. And Sean said, Louis said, I'm joining you. So the two of us went into the nightclub. We ordered a bottle of wine. The next thing, what was the song they played? Son of Jamaica. And Louis and myself just looked at each other and started roaring, laughing. It made we had a great night then, and they got a room for us. But the thing was, it just, you know, it was the end of that nightmare day that everybody has, you know. It was like, and here's the soundtrack, you know.
Yeah. If you take me back to the one I remember, which was Hold Me Now, I was too young. I was only 2 in 1980, but...
Thank you, I'm leaving now.
I've seen all the videos. But from my perspective, okay, so my picture is and my sister's 2-3 years older than me, so both of us are in our green, white and orange. I texted you this last week. We're in our green, white and orange sweatshirts. And we're jumping around the living room, you know, and what a moment. And I remember, I don't know why I remember the actual shape of the trophy. It was like triangle. It was almost like a UFO.
I have all 3 of them at home.
Have you? Yeah, amazing. So, and I remember thinking, he's won now, Ireland, and we're all celebrating at home. What next? Like, you do the press, I get all that.
Yeah.
But tell me the memories of when did you get to speak to your parents? You know, where was the party? What did you do?
No, I just, after I'd won the one in 1980, I did what everybody told me to do. I went to the press and I, did all that press stuff. After I won the one in 1987, I went to the Irish reception and they were all getting so drunk I couldn't get at the bar. So I went to the Turkish reception and there was, because they'd come last. And I knew the guy was Mustafa Oz was in charge of the Turkish delegation, and Mustafa, I went to him and we sat together on the floor and I ate steak tartare, and we drank bottles of champagne.
Not in your white suit, were you changed?
I was changed at this stage, yeah. And I went back but my white suit had quite a few champagne stains.
Yeah, I bet.
I got actually, the ABBA Museum took it for 2 years. I wasn't joking when I sent you that text. And the deal that I had was, if they could get it cleaned, that they could take it for 2 years and then they give it back to me. So it's back in the wardrobe.
And whose idea was the white suit?
Me.
That was yours?
Yeah.
You said that to RTE?
Nicky Wallace, who was the designer. It was Tom, alias Tom's at the time, a shop in Dublin.
Johnny, I worked in alias Tom's.
Did you? It was Tom and Tom. They put me with Nicky.
Do you remember Hugh? Do you remember Hugh?
Yeah.
So Hugh passed away a couple of years ago.
Oh no!
I only learned that.
That's right. Yeah, I did. I heard that actually.
So anyway, Tom. So I remember.
Sorry, Tom. This is Tom had introduced me to Nicky Graham. Nicky designed it, and I was basically telling him what I wanted because I was, quite thin and we discussed the shirts and everything and how it should look, and Tom facilitated it. I have to give him credit for that. And Nicky did the design on it, and then I took 2 suits with me. I took the white one and I took a black one, a long black coat that was very similar to the way the backing vocalists were dressed. And when I saw the stage, I realised how big the stage was, for one person at the time.
Yeah.
And so I wore the white one because it made me look, 2 things. It made me look vulnerable, and it also made me stand out. It made me larger than life. The camera had to find me, come on to me. And it just worked. And... and then the way the guys were dressed, the backing vocalists, was just stunning. And I spent the whole Eurovision doing press, doing things, but also Karen Black, Maeve McCarthy, Eugene's wife. Maeve was one of the backing vocalists, and Alan Pentony, and I kept them in a kind of team, and you would know about this from Westlife as well. And I found out afterwards that they used to call the hotel, the rooms, Colditz, because, they were all afraid to invite me out because I was so intense about this whole thing. I mean, I didn't eat. They took the costume in 3 times in the week. 3 times they had to bring the costume.
Oh, altered it.
Altered it because I lost so much weight. Couldn't eat. And because unlike the first one, I knew what I was doing the second one.
Yeah.
And then when I won...
Ignorance was bliss in 1980.
Ignorance was bliss. I went out to the Turkish thing, drank champagne. And then the next morning I went to my brother's room. My mother and my sister called me that night when I got back to the hotel, and I went into the bathroom, cried my eyes out. Just it all came out in floods of tears. And then I went the next morning, I grabbed my brother Mick, and we walked out the back door of the hotel, found a bar, found a restaurant, had some lunch and a couple of bottles of wine, then we went to the airport.
So this was the 87
This was the day after I won. That's what we did. We didn't go to the press. I didn't tell RTE and really where we were going. I was on, and I almost missed the plane coming back. And then when I arrived, when I was on the plane, I was carrying the trophy on, and I dropped it. And there was a big on the plane, and then you could hear Louis' voice saying, like, doesn't matter, he has another one.
But you know what, Johnny, that was our World Cup. You know, that was for Ireland.
No,
that was...
It was, for me, it was really unreal. You know, because nobody had ever done the Eurovision. Everybody told me I had no chance of winning it. That's right up to the time that I sang the song. I got the money. I didn't want to sign it to. I wanted to, you know, because the experience I had in 1980, I borrowed the money from a guy called Ossie Kilkenny, £8,000 or 8,000 euros. I can't remember what it was at that time. And I asked Bill Whelan to produce the record for me, and we did the record before I went. I didn't sign any publishing deals or anything, just one deal before I left. And then all of the business was done after I won it from a position of strength rather than weakness. I had no management. It was just Louis and me. And we went over. And the big mistake I made was signing to an English management, you know, agreeing for an English management. And Louis, you know, Louis wasn't, at those days, he wasn't the manager that you guys eventually had after Boyzone.
Yeah.
Louis was still that kind of little boy kind of thing.
He was
and nobody took him seriously,
right.
you know.
Okay. Yeah,
whereas they had to after Boyzone. So, but Louis would have been the best person to manage me if he could have stood up and done it at that time, but he wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And you know, then that's why I made the decision in '87, only 6 months after winning the second one. That's it. And I've been in Europe. I mean, Tanya, my manager, my business partner, and that, she's based in Munich. My band are all Danish, all session musicians. I have an incredible live show, but most of it is written by 95% of the music on the show is written by me, and the live show is becoming bigger and bigger. I mean, I know how you feel to a certain extent. I mean, like last week, I did a show for 50,000 people in the Schalke football stadium with Boy George and Level 42 and Billy Ocean.
Right.
And I thought it'd be like Night of the Living Dead, but it wasn't. Everybody looked cool.
Yeah.
And the second time I'd worked with Mark King from Level 42. The nicest guy that I've ever, and I was a huge fan in the 80s of not just his playing, but like sort of the band, you know.
Yeah.
But he's really the most solid, sound, down to earth guy I've met.
So Homie now, Johnny, like apprentice electrician. I don't want to go back because we've covered.
I know I was a shite electrician. In fairness,
I was hoping that the lights went out today because we're missing one up there.
I haven't changed a light bulb in 40 years. I'm still. I worked on Finladers in O'Connell Street. I was one of the apprentices on that. I worked in Arbour Hill Prison. I was one of the apprentices on that. I'm still waiting for them to burn down. It was dreadful. I was awful. You know, I used to bring my guitar to work. Yeah. And I think that's why they kept me. I would entertain everybody at lunch. You know, I won my first trophy when I was an apprentice electrician in Ballina, the Harp Song Festival. I sang the Mountains of Mourne, like Don McLean version of it, you know.
Yeah.
And I won, and that was the first time I left the pub at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work. I sort of
the glory days.
The glory days.
Tell me about Homie now, the songwriting, how that came about. So you won in 1980 What's Another Year. That was Shay Healy, obviously. What a great song. But then Homie now, you wrote it yourself.
Yeah.
So at that point, Johnny, had you written? I know you'd probably written 100 songs, but had you written one that was a hit before Homie now?
No. What happened with Hold Me Now? The honest truth of it is, I was in a very bad situation. I was being managed by a complete arsehole. I'd been managed by a girl called Hilary Walker who looked after Kate Bush, and she wasn't the right person for me, in any sense. And I was stagnated at where I was, and I was living in a house with 5 students. The family and all the money that I was being paid a retainer by the arsehole. And that went straight to my family in Ireland to look after them, to make sure that they were okay and we could live in the house every month. And every month I had to call him to see where the money was, because he never paid on time. And he had managed to walk into Sony Records and walk me out of the record deal that I had. That was one of the first things that he did, saying, I'll sort everything out. He did nothing. And I sat in the apartment one day and I had a bottle of wine and I started thinking about my brother's divorce, the second divorce that he was in. The first divorce, I think, was with Valerie. Valerie Rowe, Valerie, Mick was married to Mary. Yeah. And I kind of blamed a lot of that when I was looking at it on Mick's jealousy. You know, like sort of his, you know, and they both had their own problems. God knows we all have. But I know Mick could be very difficult in certain things. And I wrote a song called Me and My Jealous Heart for Mick.
So do you think he was jealous of you?
No, I think there's different, you know, like there's all internal family jealousies.
Yeah, of course,
you know,
yeah.
But there's also that, you know, Valerie was and still is a very beautiful woman. And I think Mick was always aware. He wasn't aware of how beautiful a man he was, you know, like sort of in those days. But I remember the word, nothing lasts forever. You told me so many times, I could see you changing, reading between the lines. But now you're gone and I can't let go. I'm feeling something I wish you could know. We're missing you, me and my jealous heart. And it was done just with piano and sax. And it was really cool. It was very soulful and very cool. And I realised, you know, like I could write better than the songs that I was being given. And it was a winter's day. And the snow, it was winter's evening, snow was falling. I was listening to James Ingram. I was going through my soul phase, Marvin Gaye and all of this. And I went for a walk around Wandsworth Common, which was where I was living. And I had the old Sony Walkman, you know, the button things. And I got in this, dun, da, 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 and I started singing the melody. And by the time I got round the park and back to the house, back to the room, I had one verse written. And then I wrote 3 more verses and a middle 8. And then over the period of 3 weeks, I started writing songs. I realised it had to go up because I wanted to sing something high. And I was in a bar, a bit drunk one night, a bit pissed, and I was thinking, you know, like I have to go back to Ireland. Like I said, this is sometimes, you know, how do you deal with things that don't work, like Mick with a marriage or something like this, a relationship that doesn't work? You go like sort of, what do you say when words are not enough? And I wrote it down on a napkin, and I said, that's a great line. I had it in my pocket. And I knew I wanted to use that line in the song that I was writing. So everything in the chorus was built around, what do you say when words are not enough? And 3 months later, I was still switching lines. But I recorded it on a tape with a producer I was working with. We just recorded it onto a cassette tape because there were still those in those days. And he was an incredible keyboard player. I wrote out a chord sheet for him, you know, like sort of this chords and all. It was almost 5.5 minutes long, the song. It was in G, the whole song was in G. The final thing was in F and up to, with the key change up to G. But when I finished writing it, I realised it was something special because I listened to it and I got very emotional. And I took it in, that arsehole that I told you about. I put it on the table and said, have a listen to this. He took up the tape and he threw it back down at me and he said, you record what I tell you. And I said, this is the last thing that I'm going to have to put up with. And I called Louis and I said, Louis, I want to come back to Ireland. I want to go back on the road. And I brought the tape back. We rented a house in Ashburn, put the tape on the windowsill. A year and a half later, I was one of the biggest dance bands. It become one of the most popular dance bands in Ireland again. And I was singing and I got the Eurovision. Louis, of course, called me and said, do you have anything for the Eurovision hit?
Johnny, I need a song. I need an artist.
That's exactly what he said. I need a song. And I said, well, I have 2 songs, Me and My Jealous Heart and this. And he says, will you send them in for me? And I said, yeah, well, the cassette is still there. So I dusted it off, sent it in, and they announced the finalists. And there were 6 songs, and Hold Me Now wasn't one of them. And a few days later, I said, well, it's not in. Ian McGarry called me privately and he said, I have to tell you, he said, your song is in. We didn't announce it because I wanted to speak to you first. He said the jury put it in first. Of all the songs, they chose it first, but with the recommendation that you sing it. and because nobody could sing it. They didn't feel anybody could sing it the way you can sing it, because it came out of me and all this. Cut a long story short, it was very emotional. So through a lot of conversations with Shay, Bill, my accountant, who didn't want me to do it, people were telling me yes, no, and I eventually said, oh no, like sort of, where am I now? I said, there's an opportunity. I believe in this song. I'm going to sing. And it wasn't about the song winning. I just thought it was such a great song. I wanted to sing it. And I went to Bill when I got the money to the recording. Bill agreed to arrange it for me. And the first time I heard the orchestral arrangement, I went into the Gaiety Theatre. I sat at the back of the theatre and the orchestra rehearsed it. And I remember Louis was sitting beside me and said, Jesus, Louis, I'm brilliant. Look what I wrote. But I never saw it winning. I never thought about it really winning until I won the national contest. And then I came off the side of the stage and my wife Ailish was there and she was in tears because we'd gone through a very hard few years. And I just put my arms around her and just said, that's it. It's over now. The nightmare is over. And I went back on and I sang the encore. And then Ozzy, who's never taken a drink in his life, came backstage and me and Mick had a bottle of champagne in the dressing room. He poured himself a glass, took a sip. He says, I don't normally say I'm wrong, but I was wrong. Call me on Monday and tell me what you need. And that's when I called him for the money. Yeah. But the song had to be 3 minutes long to get into the Eurovision. It was 5.5 minutes. So where did I do the edits? That's the hardest thing that you can possibly imagine as a writer. Yeah.
So what verse do you cut because it means so much, and how do you make it work musically?
How do you make it work? How does it still have the same emotion? Louis had a house in Wicklow. I was working in the Embankment doing 21 nights or something. Louis let me stay in his house in Wicklow, and I was totally isolated up there. And I did the edits on my own up there. And I came back to Bill with what because what I did was I cut the second chorus in half, brought in the middle eight immediately, and then went to a root note, high A, held high A, which went into a G. Technically, any musician who's listening will get that. That works in G. And then I figured out the repeats at the end and how to finish it. And I took it to Bill, and Bill had in the meantime cut it to 3 minutes by kind of doing a Bette Midler, double timing the middle eight. And I said, no, that's not what I want. This is what I want. And then Bill took that arrangement, and the rest is history. And that's the whole history behind it.
It's fascinating, Johnny. It's amazing. I feel honoured that you're sitting here explaining this, to be honest. Is there a line in that song that's your favourite?
Well, obviously, what do you say? One word. There's not one line that's not my favourite.
Right.
Because the whole song never loses its focus on what it's talking about.
On the story, yeah.
I didn't realise when I wrote it about love and the heartbreak you have when you lose it. Sometimes you have to walk away from it. You have to walk away. You have to, sometimes you, it's just something that's not going to work. And then sometimes you have to let go of love even and get, focus on your career and this sort of thing, and then come back to it. Yeah. And it's all kind of, that's what was going through my head. But then years later, my aunt died. It was like a second mother to me, my Aunt Lucy out in Howth. And Miggy, my cousin, was Etna's her real name, was going to play a CD of Hold Me Now, because whenever she got a few jars into her, she'd go, we'll always be together, forever in love. Shawnee, she was called Shawnee. And that's actually, my family came up from Kilkenny. They have the quarry there, and they do headstones. And they did my Lucy's grave there last year. Couldn't do it during COVID and this sort of thing, and they finished it in beautiful black marble and this sort of thing. And on the headstone is written, "Forever in Love." It's taking the line from the song. But when I listened to the song, I thought of it, always as a love song, and I understood because it's relatable. Everybody has had their heart broken, or should have had their heart broken at least once in their life. Yeah. But what I didn't realise was, I said to Miggy, you're not playing a tape for Lucy. He said, I'm coming and I'm bringing the guitar and I'm going to sing. And my son, Jack, who's a much better musician than me, came with me. Jack's playing with a band in Galway at the moment called the Leon Equation. It'll come to me, Leon something equation. It's gone. The Dax equations, and he'll kill me for forgetting. This is one of the guitar players in the band. But we played Hold Me Now, and I remember looking at Miggy, And just realising it's also about losing people. It's also about saying goodbye to people you love. And, you know, it works in this sense as well. And that's what happens with a great song.
Yeah.
Like You Raise Me Up and that sort of
People
thing.
take what they want from it.
And it becomes their song. When you put it, it's not just your song anymore, it's their song. Mono from Bows Football Club. There's Bows, I'm a member, lifetime member of Bows.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're Shamrock Rovers.
Well, I've dipped between Man United in England and Shelbourne be the local one here, and then
commiserations. I'm Manchester United.
I know. We've been through tough times. We could. That's a whole separate podcast.
Yeah, exactly. That's a couple of podcasts. But the thing is that Mono tragically died, and Mono was a great friend to me. And he introduced me to Bows Club, which is a big part of my life. You know, like the honour that they made me, you know, like doing Hold Me Now is their song. But also, and I mean that honestly, that's not bullshit for the podcast or whatever. I'm so honoured by that whole thing. I don't get a chance to go to the matches because I work away. I very seldom work in Ireland. Yeah. But I do follow what's happening all the time. But I sang it, they asked me would I sing it at his funeral. And that was probably the most emotional performance, and it was just me with the guitar on the altar, and I didn't realise there were 1,000 people outside, and they had speakers outside, and it was going out there, and the whole church stood up and applauded when I was finished. But I remember Mono's family sitting in the front row
in tears,
and like sort of me choking them back, trying not to cry because I was trying to be strong for the family and this sort of thing. And I didn't think any more about it. But then I had Joe Duffy. And Joe said it was the most emotional performance he'd ever heard. And I saw what the fans from the Bows fans wrote about it afterwards. And it really was. It was heartbreaking for me. But it was it's a performance that I'm really proud of.
My dad, to go back to my dad there, he's from Cabra, so Bows was his team. So I would have went as a kid, and they would be my team, to be honest with you, in Ireland. But I remember there was a song, you'll know it. It was a band called The Crying Shames, a song called Please Stay. Yeah. My dad used to say for years, you should sing that. You get, Westlife should cover it, but you should sing it. And I kept, I don't know if your dad ever did that or your mom ever did, but, I kind of go, oh, Dad, yeah, no problem. It's hard. I've got to get it over past the lads. I've got to get past Louis. I've got to get past SwanMcG. And then when he passed, suddenly I called the lads. We were doing You Raise Me Up. Then I kind of decided to do that. And I said to him, I want to sing this song called Please Stay. The boys had never heard it. Yeah. So, we had to learn it overnight.
That's good. And they did it.
We did it, yeah. And I sang.
Brilliant.
I sang, there's 5 verses in it. I sang the first verse, then it went to say Shane, then Keane, then Mark, and then back to me. And that was the most emotional. Yeah. I remember the church in Baldoyle, and everybody was crying because I in the eulogy explained why I'm about to do this. He always wanted to record it. I never got the opportunity, but I'm going to sing it for him today. So singing at a funeral, and as you did it as well for your own parents.
It's singing in general. I mean, that's what people miss. That's what I miss now. When I grew up, the people that I listened to, the people that I loved, were people who touched me. Touched me in so many different ways, visually, but they did something to my heart. The first time I watched Colin Wilson sing the part of Judas in Jesus Christ Superstar, I'm not a fan of musicals, but he knelt on the stage and he sang I Don't Know How to Love Him in a falsetto voice, and I was at the back of the gate and the tears rolled down. Couldn't believe what I was, and that's when I decided I really want to be a singer. Yeah. And it's country, whether it's Garth Brooks, like sort of like whether it's classical music, Adagio for Strings by Samuel Barber, whatever it is, it's that's what music is. Yeah. The thing about him, music was always really emotional for me. That's got the part of Adam and Eve. I was working as an electrician. And
that's debatable now when you're an electrician.
Well, I mean, it really is. That's not a joke. It really. I was so bad. Lately I've been thinking about it. And I realised I couldn't wire a house. I didn't know how it worked. And I was in my 4th year. I would have been dreadful. I wouldn't have got a job with anybody. It's just as well I went into the singing. But the thing was, I remember doing Send in the Clowns. But I didn't sing it like, isn't it rich? Are we up? I just sang it. I played the guitar. Did it in A. Isn't it rich? Aren't we a pair? Me here. At last on the ground, you in midair. And it was, and I was halfway through it. You got it. You got the part. Mm-hmm. And that was how I became, the professional singer. It's just, and it's been like that all my life. And that's why the vocal on You Raise Me Up was so good.
Yeah.
Because there's something that bypasses my brain with the voice. It comes straight out the heart. I also, this is going to sound like I'm bragging a bit, which I don't mean to do, but it's the honest truth. I'm a good singer. I'm technically a very good singer. I've worked with great producers. I've learned, what it means to sing behind the beat. I now produce all my own vocals, and it's a lot faster than it used to be.
Yeah.
But I was worked very, very hard by people like Roberto De Nova. Worked me 4 hours on one line once, which was crazy, to be honest, because we went with one of the lines at the beginning. He just kept the other 4 going, but the other 4 hours going. But the thing is, I know that I'm starting to sound like one of the guys from my generation. I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
And I did.
But different, but it was different times. But it stood to you, and I was going to ask you about this. It leads nicely into a segue into this part, because the Eurovision today is very different to the Eurovision.
But the music industry is very different.
Well, that's true too, yeah. But even when my experience of the Eurovision 2016 is different again now, where every vocal had to be live, but the music wasn't.
Yeah.
But every vocal had to be live, and then after COVID, it's only the lead vocal now that has to be live. Backing vocals aren't.
Yeah, I didn't.
Don't have to be live.
No, I didn't know that.
When you did it, all the vocals were live,
Yeah.
and the music was live.
Yeah, everything was live.
So, what's your thoughts on it now? Whereas, particularly when you were there, the big ballad moments, the white suit, the big versus the big kind of spectacles. It's
just gone the way the music industry has gone. Now it is. I mean, with the greatest respect to you and to Boyzone and Westlife and all those ones, you played stadiums and things like this, and you moved into the big time, really following. What was that band in England? The
Take That.
Take That. There was kind of
New
a
Kids
market.
on the Block in America.
Yeah, all of this. It was your time.
Yeah.
But I came from the smaller clubs.
Yeah.
I played the lower deck for American tourists, playing traditional Irish music, and then in the evening I'd shoot up to Louis'd have me booked in the National Ballroom playing dance music, and other times I'd be playing in a rock venue, the Baggett Inn or whatever, doing that. I did whatever I needed to do to make money. I did cabaret. I remember the big one, which was one of Dickie's songs. We used to do it in Finglas, the Fingal Inn. It's my happy heart you hear singing loud. All you had to do was start the chorus.
Yeah.
It's like.
Do you remember that was probably? Do you remember Dolly's? Dolly's, the pub Dolly's. That was another cabaret.
I was everywhere. I was at Pierce Webb's place down in Christchurch. If they had a stage, I was there. That's.
And Louis would definitely know about it, and he put you there. Tell me about Why Me, Johnny? Because why didn't you sing that song?
That's. I wrote that for me.
Yeah,
I wrote for me. Again, Louis involved in this one. I wrote that for me. I was sitting I have a music room, where piano and this sort of thing, and smaller than your one, the one that I saw up there, but it's where I did my writing. I've got 2 keyboards and I different guitars and stuff like that. And I was sitting at the keyboards, and I was watching my wife gardening, and I thought, how can anybody love somebody so much and so unselfishly? It's a love that's very hard for me, because in the music industry, we are very selfish people in many ways, because, no matter how much we say, we think about our family, and we go away and we come back and they're supposed to be there and sort of ready for us to take up where we left off and all of that. And it's a very solitary lifestyle when you're in the music industry. I don't know what it was like in a band, boy band, but in mine it was very solitary. And I looked at her and I started playing the piano, and I go, sometimes I watch you passing by my window, which he just passed it. Sometimes I watch you passing through my dreams.
And she went, will you shut up, I'm gardening?
No, that was my...
cutting the grass.
That was my younger son, the musician, Jack. But it was really... I got the song, wrote it, and it was again about 4.5 minutes long. And I put it down on a cassette, and I recorded it. I went over to a studio and I put a vocal on it. Frank McNamara's studio over in Dunshaughlin. And I did a vocal on it, and I just knew, I couldn't get home that night because there was ice on the road. So I slept under the desk, because he was having work done in his house and the house was freezing. So I slept under the desk where the heat was with a bottle of wine and listening to it over and over again, doing the usual emotional thing, crying, listening to it. This works. And I knew I had it, like Hold Me Now, I knew I had something special because it made me emotional. And that's the only gauge that I can go with. And I thought, okay, I brought it to the record company in Warner. It was in Frankfurt I was with. I met the head of the record company, and the guy who was managing me used to look after Jennifer Rush at the time. And I gave it to them. They listened to it in another room. And Michael Stark, who was the guy from the management thing there, came and said, it's a lovely song, but it's too personal. It'll never be a hit. I said, okay, but I'm going to record it sooner or later, so I kept it. And then Louis made a phone call. He says, look, Terminal 3 came second in 1984 in Luxembourg for Chips, and Linda was the singer with Chips. It almost won. It was winning.
And you wrote that as well?
I wrote that as well. That was music and lyrics, Sean Sherrard. And I did the edit and that. And that it got so close. Louis said, can you write something for Linda? And I thought, okay. I sat at the keyboard and I started writing different things, and over a period of a week, 2 weeks. And they all sound contrived. They all sounded like they were trying to win the Eurovision. So I went to the Why Me, and it took me ages to switch. A very simple line. It's like, why me? You know, there was a line, I'm such a lucky guy, which she couldn't sing, so I changed it as My Love Shines in Your Eyes. I changed it to that. And then I edited it down to 3 minutes, went over to Frank McG, re-recorded the piano vocal, and sent it in. And then it got in. And then I worked with Linda on it, and she was brilliant. Linda's a total professional.
Yeah, amazing singer.
And we worked in, so we worked in the studio, and I sang it in her key, in the what do you call it? And I recorded my vocal in her key.
Okay.
And then she went in and she did her vocal, using that as the guide. And then she said to me, what should I do now? And I remember saying to her, and she gives me credit for this, I remember said, what you do is you listen to it day and night till you're sick of it. You listen to it when you're driving in the car, going to gigs, when you're home, until you're absolutely sick of it. And because there'll be a moment when you're on the Eurovision where you'll panic.
100%. That's and my worst fear is forgetting the word.
That's it.
And you've nailed it there, because if you like, what's that famous saying? Practice makes, not perfect, practice makes permanent.
Permanent, yeah.
That's
I just knew
so
that if she learnt it that way, like it's like driving a car, you'd put your foot on your brake at the right time, or you'd accelerate at the right time. And she did that. And at the same time I said, Linda, if you do this right, I think you'll win the Eurovision. And there was an airstrike on. I was in Germany, and the Eurovision was in Malmo. And the only way I could get from, I was promoting an album, to get to Linda, was they gave me a driver, and he had to drive like 9-10 hours to get to Malmo, and he drove me, and I arrived. I had a cold sore, like sort of I picked up a cold, and I remember like sort of, and I was enjoying a bottle of champagne as the marks were coming in. I was standing with Alan Pentony, one of the backing vocalists, at the champagne bar in the green room, because they let the right in Shay's time they wouldn't let the writer backstage, but by '92 they had, and I was standing backstage, and Linda, look, we were in the first half. She was doing okay. She was picking up 8 and 10, and she said, "Oh, we're too far behind." And I remember saying to her, "This is not your side of the board, Linda. The next side is yours." And sure enough, she started getting 12s. And the next thing I remember, I was pissed. She was, like I was knocking back champagnes to the Goodo every time she got 12. And then I remember she won. She went out to the stage, and RTE had asked me at a different point to get involved with the song, singing it, and I said no. I said, this is Linda's song, and it's going to stay Linda's song. And I wrote it for me or whatever, but I'm not going to. Thank you. There's a magic bottle. There's a magic
this
bottle.
This amazing studio. And I'm in this story. Continue. RT wanted you to duet with her or do it?
There was all these suggestions,
right.
And I said no, because they were doing a documentary on me.
Right. Okay.
I don't think Linda ever knew this, but they were putting a lot of pressure on me to be involved with the song from a singing point of view. And I said no. This is Linda. Linda earned this, and she won the national song contest. I gave her the song. It's her song now. So I don't think I was ever forgiven for that, and I think that's why I had a problem with the RTE for many years. But I stood by it, and what I did tell them was, I said, for your documentary, what I'll do is, when Linda wins, I didn't say if, I said when Linda wins, I'll sing backing vocals. I'll go up with the backing vocals. And if you look at the video,
did you do it?
Yeah, I went up and I sang backing vocals with Frank McNamara and the backing vocals.
I didn't know that. Wow.
You can watch the video and you'll see it as I walked up to it. First of all, I took the trophy when it came in. I said, that's mine. And luckily they had a second one. They gave them which was very rude of me. And I was like, I don't know whether I ever apologised to Linda properly, but you know, she understood.
We'll call her after this.
It made Linda and myself very close.
Yeah,
and like we're like, it's like Shay and myself were very, very close. Linda and myself are like sort of extremely close now.
After that, Johnny, was that it then? Did you say I can't do this anymore at Eurovision, or there might be another opportunity?
No, I just said no. I've thought about it at different times, but I'm 71. You know, and now
you definitely don't look it.
Well, thank you, but I feel it sometimes. But the thing is, where I am at the moment, I'm really happy with the music I'm writing. Music I'm producing. It's not Eurovision based, it's not even pop based, it's more New Orleans based, New Orleans with a swing, kind of some bits of rock, and it's my music. And it's throwing these big ballads in there still, they're just slightly changed, and I have my own production team. And to do that, to do the Eurovision, I would have to be, it's not about, people say they just watch the Eurovision, the person singing 3 months. You know, you've done it. Even to be involved with it, you have to focus on the song. Takes up so much of your private time, the presentation, the production of it. Yeah. And if I'm working with someone else singing it or whatever, then it takes up twice the time because I have to show them how to sing it and or work with them on how to sing it.
And nobody's ever going to look after your baby like you.
No, exactly. And and then afterwards, I wouldn't leave the singer if they won. I'd want to be with them and guide them. Yeah. You know, to make sure that they didn't go through the shit that I had to deal with. Yeah. And I think that would take 6 months out of my life, and it's 6 months I don't have to give that I'm not willing to give.
But you're saying there's a chance.
No, I'm saying that's why there's no chance.
There's it's 87. That'll be 40 years in 2 years' time.
Yeah. Imagine how what's in the year feels. It's already 40.
I can't even do that.
45 years.
Wow. Do you think a song like that can still win that tournament?
Absolutely.
It can.
Absolutely.
That's good to hear. That's refreshing.
No, absolutely. The right song. You know, a song that has the right emotion that connects with people will always win. It will always win.
Okay.
But
do you have one of those cassette tapes on your windowsill in Ashbourne that you wrote 10 years ago?
But I have loads of songs now. I'm constantly writing. I haven't written this year because I had a bit of a block. I just went down to Kerry to Dingle and to Killarney for 3-4 days just to clear my head, and I'm ready now to write again. So I'll begin again now soon. But I have so much work already in the diary. I'm up to midway through 26, with live work, and that's...
No, for you to ever even consider writing or performing or anything for Eurovision, it would take out a year of your life.
Yeah, I'd considered, like, if I had something that stood out as something for Eurovision. There is one song that I started writing after my brother died, and it's again, it kind of reminds me of when I sang "Sending the Clowns." The vocal I did, I have a video of me singing the verse and the chorus, and there's only one line, and it's been a hard year this year, and it's just the minute I wrote it, I went shit, and then the next day I was driving a car, and the whole song came back into my head, the verse, the melody completely, and I realised that's got exactly what the others had. And it's, but it needs a lyric that is a positive lyric, and that is, I have to find the right lyric for it. Basically, it's not there yet. It's not there yet, and that's.
If you created that song and it was the right song, would you ever consider performing it for Eurovision?
Performing it, not for the Eurovision. Performing
never.
It, yes. I've learned from watching a James Bond movie from Sean Connery, never say never again. Yeah. But the thing is, I don't think so. I think my family, I think the people around me who love me
wouldn't let you put them through it again. I get that. It would be you putting on the green jacket for Ireland because we've been abysmal.
I have worn the green jacket very proudly for 45 years.
Of course you have, yeah.
And I've tried to be an ambassador for Ireland, not just for myself, but for people like yourself and like you have with Westlife and that as well. And I've done the best I could to open as many doors for people quietly as I could do. Yeah. And I'll continue to do that. I'm an extremely proud Irishman and will always be. And that's, like I said, I was born in Australia, but as I always say, like I said, just because you're born in a stable doesn't make you a horse. Like I said, it's just, you opened it with the line that I come up with sometimes when I'm talking to people. I was born in a little village off the coast of Ireland called Australia. What was that? Some fella once said to me, I said, how can you sing for Ireland? You're not, or you were born in Australia. How can you sing for Ireland? Just because you're born in a stable, man, doesn't make you a horse.
Doesn't make you a horse. You spoke with the press. You fell out with the press. You fell in with the press.
Some of it's childish. Some of it, I had a lovely conversation last year with Barry Egan. It was one of, and I have good friends in the press. I have Eddie Rowley as well, as a good friend of mine. Yeah. But I have people who've stabbed me, and I've made terrible mistakes. Sometimes I take it personally, and I made a big mistake when I did a Dickie interview during COVID, the end of COVID, where a journalist from the Times spoke to me for about an hour, and then threw in a line, something about Dickie regretting having affairs and all this, and then tried to tie me to that remark that Dickie had made. And instead of attacking her, I attacked Dickie. And afterwards, I really regretted it, deeply regretted it. And, sort of part of the reason that I'm doing the show, that I did the tribute show for him, this sort of thing. But the thing is, like a lot of the stuff, the distrust that I had for the press was well earned by the press, through experience through the press. Back when I won the first Eurovision, I fell out with Jim Hand. There were 5 basic managers in Ireland only. It was Jim Hand, Tommy Hayden, the guys who managed the Miami. There was about 5 in Costello. And Jim had told them, hands off, he's mine. And they kept their hands off me. Jim got me to manage me. Jim's son, Brian, is one of my best friends now, and I wouldn't say he's one of the nicest guys you could possibly meet, and one of the most honest guys you could possibly meet. His dad could be a bit weird, and but his dad's twin brother Michael was the editor of the Independent, and in those days papers mattered. And Jim and me went to court and stayed in court for 4 years, and I don't call it coincidence that during that time I had an awful lot of bad press.
Okay.
And I think, but also I was wrapped up in a lot of self-pity at different times, and it took an awful lot of strength from me personally to get through that. And then I had a long conversation. It had happened to me over again at times when I didn't deserve it, when I got knifed in the back. But Barry, who's been around for years as well, he sat me down and he just said, look, if you get asked a question you don't want to answer, why don't you just say no? I'm not answering that, and instead of trying to weasel your way out of the answer. Yeah. And it was such a simple thing. And
it's a good bit of advice, really, isn't
it? You're right.
Yeah.
And that's
no is a sentence.
Yeah, and that's the attitude I have now. And the reality is that I don't need them anymore. I don't need the money. I have enough work. I'm 71 years old. Nobody in my family, none of the men have lasted longer than me. Right. So when I pop my clogs, I'll be the eldest member of my family to go. And the thing is that it doesn't stop me being respectful of the people that are doing what they're doing, but it also allows me to cut through the bullshit and say no. I don't need to do the promotion on this. Yeah. And the way the music industry has gone as well, I don't think the newspapers and media have the power that they had years before. I think it's different now. Social media has the power. Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, streaming, platforms, they have all the power now.
Well, see, it's interesting because I've said for years I prefer to do this type of thing or live radio or TV because they can physically see what you're saying and they can't take out half of it and put in some
I would agree totally.
Print media can...
I'd agree totally, but can I tell you this is the first podcast I've ever done.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was only because you called me that I agreed to come and do it.
Thank you very much.
No, because we met at the dancing show.
Yeah, the Dance with the Stars. We also, you did the hit I hosted when you sang "Praying," that song.
That was. I always felt that was such a great song, but when they did it in the final, it was like it was like tying my hands behind my back, because I had done a song that was kind of really modern and very influenced by an American band, particularly American band. And the sounds that were used on it were synthesizers, but particularly they weren't orchestral sounds. Right. It could be recorded with an orchestra, but I needed all those samples and everything else. And when they did the final, they gave you an orchestra and they told you had to do it with the orchestra. Well, you were never going to get the same kind of power coming from the track. Right. There was rap in it. There was a rap moment, which I've never done before or since. But it was a great song. And, I was delighted for Finbar that it won.
Yeah.
But I thought that Praying could have been a big hit.
Yeah.
Really big hit for the starter, yeah.
Two more things, Johnny. You've mentioned bottles of wine here, there and everywhere. But you don't drink anymore, do you?
I haven't drank for 20 years. Yeah.
20 years?
Yeah.
Obviously a reason for that, health benefits?
No, I just drank too much. I mean, I had a party that went on for 20 years. No regrets. The thing is, I could have focused more on my career and on my music, but it's out of my system, and I'm still alive. Not like a lot of friends of mine that are not breathing now.
What effect did it have on you? Did it have a bad effect on you?
I lived the lyrics I write. Right. I don't write about something from a distance. I was there. In all the things that I write, I'm part of those. And the thing is that doesn't make it right, but it just makes something I went through. I grew up with people who drank. I started playing in Irish traditional pubs when I was 16 years old. We owned a bar when I was 11 up in Drogheda. I could drink a pint in 3 seconds when I was 15 years old. Just because I looked innocent in 1980 and in 87 and, maybe even a little bit still, doesn't mean I am. I've seen life from a lot of different angles. And I've survived it. And I'm out the other end of it. And I've tried to steer my children, in the best way I can. I'm always there for advice. But everybody's got to live their own life and they've got to make their own mistakes.
Yeah.
And but I'm always here. I'm here for my friends. I'm here for fans. I'm here for Nicky Byrne if he gives me a call and asks me will I do a podcast.
Yeah, no, that's pretty amazing. Thank you so much. Life for Johnny Logan now, what's next? Walking on the streets, you must be stopped every day.
Yeah, I have.
Day,
what's lovely? I did 5 unplugged shows in Belgium, and thankfully they were all sold out. It was me with 3 German musicians and a sound man. And I had to play guitar and everything, which is very good for my guitar playing. Because I was a much better guitar player when I was 16, 17 years old. But I'm back there now. I'm actually training back.
And you played my dad's guitar and
the Washburn.
Yeah,
it was one of the original Washburns.
It is.
Not one of the Chinese companies.
And he would have been so proud sitting watching you do that.
I should have played What's Another Year for him. But what do you call it? I think what's next for me? I'm going to finish up the 4 tracks that I have. I have 4 more tracks to write to get to the situation where I am with the album now at the moment. The album is very eclectic, lots of different styles of music. So I don't think I'll release an album. I'll just release 1 track at a time. I'm talking to a streaming company in England at the moment, and I'm getting back a very positive reaction from them. Kate Bush is signed to them, and so are Madness and this. So people from my ear, they kind of understand and they kind of know the platforms, and they're very, very involved with the, from what they've told me, with the streaming, but also advising on how to promote it on Facebook and Instagram, which I'm useless at. My manager Tanya is brilliant at. But I think I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. The gigs are getting better and better. I'm getting more fun out of them. I'm singing great. I had a polyp removed from my vocal cords years ago, and I had to learn to talk again. And then I had to learn to sing. And I fought my way back, and I got my voice is better now than it was back then. And I think I love musicians. I love music. I love people in the music business. I love that, and I always have done. And I want to do that for as long as God allows, as long as I'm allowed to do it.
Yeah.
And the day that I can't sing anymore, they'll probably end up burying me.
And then there's the party in the sky. You have to go back on the pyramid.
Mick could be waiting for me. But Mick and Colin Tully, the sax player from the What's Another Year, Colin died unfortunately a couple of years ago. But I was mailing with him before, and he told me that he was still living off the stories of the touring in 1980, the Champagne touring with me and Louis, with all the different airplanes and countries we went to. And he said, "I'll make sure, if there's a bar in heaven, that I have a bottle of champagne waiting for you when you come."
And a stool at the bar.
A stool at the bar. That's been guaranteed by quite a few people.
Yeah. You've no regrets, Johnny? I mean, if you did not do regrets.
I have some regrets, like everybody has. I've things that I wish I hadn't have done that I did. I've made mistakes. I've learned to live with the mistakes I've made. But where I am in my life at the moment, I'm loved and I love. And I love, and what I do for a living, I do because I love doing it. And
You're content.
I'm
You're
content.
happy.
I'm happy. Yeah.
Yeah,
I find the traveling a lot very hard sometimes.
Okay.
I think that's also, you know, like I told you, like said that I have sometimes, you know, really early starts in the morning. You know about that as well.
Yeah.
But the older you get, the more sleep you need. And you know, I've bits of my body that start hurting after gigs.
Yeah.
You know, did never hurt before.
Yeah.
You know? As Mick used to say, it takes me all night to do what I used to do all night.
Brilliant. Right, Johnny, before I let you go, I ask everybody this. I put together a boy band of, well, I don't, you do, the guest does. So I want you to put together a band of 5 singers, anyone in the world. It can be yourself. It can be.
Do they have to be my age group?
No, it can be whoever. It could be Frank Sinatra. It could be Elvis Presley. It can be, you know, Justin Timberlake, Robbie. It can be you. You name it. 5 people, and then you got to think one is gonna leave because in a boy band somebody always jumps ship. So 5 names, Johnny. Give me 5 names. Who would make the ultimate boy band in your eyes?
Marvin Gaye.
Okay.
Michael McDonald.
Okay.
James Ingram.
Okay.
Sorry, can I change James Ingram's Luther Vandross?
Oh wow, yeah.
I'm the fifth member, aren't I?
Yeah, put
So
yourself.
I've got one more member.
Yeah. So you got Michael McDonald, Luther Vandross, Marvin Gaye,
Marvin Gaye.
Johnny Logan.
I'd have to go with. There's so many to choose from. Smokey Robinson.
Okay.
I'd have to go with as the 4th member, and the member that would leave would be me.
I knew you were going to say you. You'd be able to, I'm not putting up with this bullshit.
No, they're too good. I'm not sticking with them.
Johnny, I know you don't drink. I have a bar in the house. Would you pull me a pint for social media?
Yeah, I was a barman.
Yeah, you were a barman?
Yeah, we owned the pub in Drogheda. I was a barman for 5 years.
Because I didn't know, because you're obviously teetotaler, whether you'd be okay with pulling a pint. Because usually I get 2 pints and we do a sláinte, but you don't drink.
Absolutely.
So. Yeah, you did that.
Sort of, what have you got over? Is it Guinness or
It's Guinness on taps, yeah. No, we've other stuff when we big parties and stuff.
It's been a long time since, but I was a barman for 5 years.
So you'll know exactly how to do it.
Yeah, well, depending on the tap, yeah.
All right, excuses.
No,
Johnny,
we in the last thing, just when we owned the pub, we used to bottle our own Guinness, put corks in it.
Oh, wow.
Like sort of pour the Guinness into the bottle, cork it and label it, sell it upstairs.
Amazing. Well, listen, Johnny Logan, you are an absolute legend. Thank you so much.
Like a leg end, but thank you, Nicky.
Yeah,
it's been a pleasure, man.
No, thank you. And I want to give you a cup, so if you got a cup, you know what?
There was a box there.
Yeah, I'll get it for you. But this is...
That cough and scream in the background.
There it is there, throw it.
Probably stole it.
Every guest on the show gets one of them. Now, if you take that out, it's in Irish. It says Le Gras, the other side, Le Gras Joe.
My wife speaks Irish. She was an Irish teacher.
Wow, amazing. Yeah. So she'll love that. It's it, which means with love always. Johnny, you've given me so many memories, all of us, and I'd love to see you for the 40th anniversary of Hold Me Now. Do something for Ireland. I'm not going to put it out there. Well, I am putting it out there into the atmosphere, because sometimes that works. That you will dream up that song that's half written. And do it for somebody, or you do it, or somebody will happen. That magic will go one more time.
Oh,
a hat trick.
Just give me an orchestra and I might think about it.
Okay. It's been out there. Johnny Logan, everybody.
Thank you, Nicky. It's been a pleasure, man.